Hello and welcome to Camera Review. As promised, we are doing the review comparing Sony A6600 with Fuji X-T3. And the reason for this comparison is they are very similar in terms of pricing. Sony with their latest release is priced around $1,400 and Fuji X-T3 with all its capabilities is $1,500. Yet they offer very different packages. One thing they have in common is that they are both APS-C. But what they do with that APS-C is very different. So that is what we're going to talk about. And I'm also going to mention my experience with using Fuji and my experience using Sony A type of cameras, the A6500 and all the other ones. And those are the ones from which we are going to derive that information and to come to a conclusion whether this camera, that the A6600 is the right camera for you, or if it is the Fuji X-T3. Now, if you're in the market for either of these cameras, I will tell you this. From a marketing point of view, I'm not giving the specs or anything else, Sony has an advantage. This advantage is it looks very simple. It doesn't look complicated. It doesn't have any dials that are like you got the aperture settings or the compensation dials or all those things. They are not there. So what makes it look like is looks like a simpler iPad kind of version of a phone. So you are going to have less intimidation for those people who never use it. So they're coming into the market, they want to buy something, they see those dials on the Fuji and they go, oh, no, because they don't know what an aperture is. They don't know what shutter speed is. They don't know what the ISO is. So they have no idea. All they know is they want to press the button, they want to capture good photographs, call themselves videographers, vloggers, photographers, whatever they want to do. That's what the camera is for. And then what they're going to do is they're going to use this camera as simply as possible, because what they want to do is point and shoot, and a simple operation. And most of the times this is what these smaller cameras, entry-level cameras, are intended to be. Yet when you look deep down inside that camera, and if you are going to expand your photography or video, or you're gonna get into filming, you're gonna find that there are a lot of limitations when it comes to expanding from, let's say, Sony A6600 into a more professional setup. So it is for that reason I wanted to get into both of these cameras and compare them side by side. And I tell you what has been missing, what is being included, and certain things that Sony has advantage of. So let's talk about what has Sony improved. First of all, they improved their battery. They have a much bigger battery. It lasts a lot longer. You can take, they say, 2,000 shots, maybe 1,500. It doesn't matter. You're taking a lot of shots. But what that is going to help a lot with is capturing video. That is where the secret to having a long battery becomes crucial. Because if you are not going to attach external batteries or external power supplies, you're saving yourself a lot of headache. Number two, it is as simple as it is, has a very low data bit, which means that when you're recording video, it says 4K, but it's only 100 megabits per second. So you can put it onto the cheapest laptop and edit it and post it on whatever platform you wish, whether it's YouTube or your Instagram or your Facebook. So what you're doing is appealing to a market where the customer or the client does not know what it is getting. So what he's getting is he's getting a camera that only does 100 megabits, and then you're getting a camera that you're comparing it to which does 400. So if that person has no ability in terms of editing and just wants to use the video as it comes out of the camera, then this is the right formula. So in that respect, without knowing or intentional or unintentional, Sony has done something right, which is to produce a camera. Price is high so that it looks like, oh yeah, I'm getting a good deal, and it must be good because they price it this way. But you're getting a camera that, when compared to the other cameras in the market, is not probably the best camera. So Beyond that, there is another thing that they improved upon, which is should have been there in the first place for many, many years, and that is the mic jack. So how can you make a video if you don't have a mic jack that goes in? And that is where we had a lot of problems with. So there was external recording. They were trying to put stuff on top of the cameras and then trying to get the audio, and it was a whole mess. And what you recorded internally from the mics on the camera itself was not sufficient. So for the first time, we're seeing this huge ability to get incredible sound into the camera. So when you record it, you don't have to find it. Again, a smart move. Again, another smart move for Sony is that they didn't put a lot of those new features that are found in A6600 into their A6100. So that is a whole topic in itself, which I'm going to do another review and talk about it. But let's stick to A6600. So what they did is they have IBIS, which is internal body stabilization, 5-axis, steady shot, whatever they call it. That is a big plus. And when it comes to comparing to Fuji, they have an upper hand on that one. And that's a given. That's something that Sony has been working on for many, many years. And it does help to capture better photographs, especially in low light. Yet, when we look at what the sensor is doing and what the image quality is, that's where they differentiate. Another important point. When you look at Sony, they have put a very slow buffer and very slow card reader, UHS 1, and they should have had UHS 2, where you can transfer the information a lot faster from the memory buffer into the card, so that you don't have to worry about having a lag in terms of shots. So when you shoot with Sony, you're getting about 40, 45, around that range of frames before the system shuts down almost, and then you have to wait till it clears the buffer memory so that you are able to use it again. When you go to Fuji, what you're going to have is 145 shots. That is an incredible difference. That's almost 3.5 times or almost 3 times. That is going to make a huge difference if you are shooting action, somebody skateboarding, somebody running, somebody doing a jump off the cliff with their snowboard. That is where it's going to make a huge difference. So that was left out, and that is where I find Sony has punished the consumer by putting an inferior memory card system, which is the UHS 1. Another important factor is when you look into the system, they have the older, much antiquated, in my point of view, sensor. What is that 24.2? They have not improved anything in 3 years. In 2016, they came out with their A6500. In 3 years, they could have done a lot more. Yet, they are saving it. And as I mentioned in my other video, when I talked about this A6600, you are seeing that they are going to make that happen in the next generation. In the meantime, make a lot of money trying to sell this A6600. They are going into the same kind of areas that Nikon and Canon had done, just holding back on the technology. And people are going to notice that eventually. Yet here we're looking at this camera, and they're supposed to be flagship cameras, yet their flagship camera has a very old sensor in terms of how fast the technology is moving. So you got 24.2, and then you look at Fuji, which is 26. Now, that's 2 megapixels, does make a difference, especially on APS-C. And it's a newer generation, and it has a much better ISO performance, and it has much more capabilities. And for all it's worth, I think in the market, all of the camera manufacturers, Fuji probably competes for the first spot or the second spot, depending on Leica and Fuji, for the color science. They have probably the best color science, because remember, Fuji comes from the time when they were producing film, and they were using in film cameras. So they have this huge knowledge that they can draw upon to create this color science. And yet Sony is not even there. They are not having an approach in proximity to get that kind of quality, that kind of special renditioning that we see with Fuji cameras. And if you look at the Fuji cameras, you're going to find they have this beautiful choice of applications where you can get black and whites and colors and these beautiful renditionings, and it makes it look like it was shot with a much more expensive camera, yet it's only $1,500. So that makes a huge difference for me. The color science in itself is a hands-down winner. So beyond that, when you look at it, there is the video capabilities. Video capabilities is where they just go all in different directions. So Sony, as you know, has UHD, which is 3840. So that's what you get. And the one that Fuji is having is a DCI. So you get 4096. So it is the cinema standard. You're getting much better frame size. So that means if you're doing filming, that is going to help. That's the acceptable standards. UH standard, which is ultra high definition, is designed for example, YouTube, where you're gonna upload it and it doesn't accept any more than that. But if you are into making something worthwhile, something that is great, this is where it comes. This is where it shines. This is where you're going to find a huge difference. Again, I mentioned in my other video with the Sony A6600, they're only putting 100 megabits out. Now Fuji is putting out up to 400. So when you're having is 4 times the data, yes, is it going to slow down the processing when you're doing it on your computer for editing, but it gives you that leverage. And if you are going to make something incredibly good, this is what it is. You can take that image and work it in the post to make it look good. If you have shot it in the dark or if you shot it in bright light, you have much more latitude to save that image. And that is going to help you in a lot of areas where you're going to feel like, yes, this has saved the day. Plus of the fact that you have these already presets that you can apply to Fuji that is already aligned to work with the Fuji's codec that has come out of there. So what is happening is that you don't have to worry about editing per se in terms of color correcting, but you only have to decide whether you want to deal with a larger file size that is going to give you much more latitude. And that is where it makes a big difference. Again, when we look at it, you got the 10-bit. 10-bit is very good for Fuji, which means that you're getting a lot more color information that is going to help you with getting those colors accurate. And if you're doing video, that is going to make things shine. Again, if you looked at all the Sony cameras from the A series, A7s, and everything else, even in this technology, they have this very flat, muted look, and it makes things look very two-dimensional. It looks like it came out of an old Hulga camera. That is the look I dislike very much, but it is something that people have taken in and said, artistically, I like this and I like that. That's a personal taste. I'm not going to get into that. What I will get into is that is the only one pony trick that it does. That's what it has. It has colors that are not accurate. But when you go to Fuji, then you're going to see a much big difference there, because the 10-bit information combined with the color science is going to produce that huge difference. And that's what I look for. Again, there's another important factor, which is you are going to look at this camera and you're going to say, are they good as far as autofocus? And I tell you this, when you look at Sony with their eye tracking, which is a fantastic way of handling information that's in front of the screen. That means you're tracking somebody moving, somebody jumping, somebody doing something. You are able to track that person or that image. So that is giving that shot video capability-wise an incredible advantage over other camera systems out there. The only one that really competes, and I think it beats Sony in a lot of respects, is Fuji's. Fuji has a very, very similar system where it knows the eye and catches the eye and tracks the eye to get that incredible quality. And that is what I look for when I get a camera if I'm going to do vlogging or video, because I want to be able to track the subject as that subject moves across the screen, or if it's approaching, that's even much harder. And that's where these two cameras are head to head. Again, what is also important here to follow is the fact that both of these cameras have good autofocus, they differ in the way that they render the color. So that is another important factor. And that is when we do videos for weddings or other things that you're going to go, I wish the bride's skin looked much better, or I wish they glowed better, or you might be going, you know what, this scene that I shot of this beautiful landscape or the sunset looks much more vibrant when I do it with Fuji versus Sony. That's what I'm talking about. Now, that's not to say Sony doesn't have very high-end cameras. They do. They do it for professional reasons that cost tens of thousands of dollars. But that technology is not in here, and that's not the technology that they use for this. Fuji, on the other hand, you should look at it as the company that knows lenses, and that's where it comes to be critical, because not only does Fuji produce lenses for their own lineup, but they produce professional grade cinema lenses, and they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, lens producers in the world. So they have this huge knowledge, know-how that allows their lenses to be specially designed to work with their sensors, giving you an advantage in terms of using it to get the most out of your sensor and camera. And that in itself is a big selling point. As well as looking at their price point of view, you're going to find that Fuji lenses cost less and perform just as well or even better than Sony. Sony, remember, is been in the game for a very short time in terms of lens history. Yet they have done the smartest things. First of all, they opened up their lineup to Zeiss to have Zeiss lenses being produced for their lineup. But more importantly, they have done the best in terms of like getting higher quality optics to their lineup. But that comes with a price. And Sony is trying to push the price higher to differentiate themselves and saying we are better than Canon and Nikon in terms of, or we are equal in quality to those bigger names. So in that respect, I think that they have done a marketing scheme that is going to probably fall in its face, because they could have done something much better than that. Also, when you look at the sensor technology that Sony has, because it's older technology, it has rolling shutter. Rolling shutter issues are a big pain when it comes to doing video, because you don't want to have rolling shutter. It's disturbing. It doesn't look professional. And that's where we have problems with the 4K on the Sony. Fuji, because of their newer sensors, because of their technology, they have almost none of that in their Fuji X-T3, which is a very, very important factor. Another important factor is the jello effect. Jello effect that we see when we do the verticals, and that video styling is going to also not play very well for Sony. So what we want to have is as much rolling shutter off. We want to have as much code quality. We want to have as much capabilities in the camera that's going to render as much information as possible for the end user, so that they can do what they want. What is good is, you're going to ask me probably, and I'll get this question asked, what about if I only want to use 100 megabits? Well, you can. There is that setting. You can do the lower setting on the camera to get 100 megabits per second, which is going to be the same as Sony, but you have that latitude, that choice to do what you want to do. And that is what I like about it. Also, what you're going to see is that these phase detection points that the Sony has been bragging about, the 425, they have a very, very similar technology in Fuji that covers the entire screen. So I don't see that there is a difference in terms of autofocus capabilities as much as I see the other departments having other issues. Personally, I like the way that that Fuji has done with, in terms of not only delivering incredible high quality images that looks very distinct and unique and very sharp and very accurate in colors, but also in video capabilities, they haven't held anything back. For me, that is a big plus, and that's what makes certain companies excel. That's what made Sony excel in the first place. So to recap all that, I will say this. If you're in the market to look for an APS-C sensor type of camera that you want to use for vlog, Fuji X-T3 still the better option. Although Sony has in-body stabilization that works very well. They have tested it out and they have made a big improvement and leaps and bounds above other companies out there. But when it comes to getting color, when it comes to editing and information, and when it comes to user flexibility, Fuji beats Sony in all respects. As a stills photography camera, I think Fuji is incredibly good because they have incredibly good sharp lenses, incredible quality, and when you shoot with the Fuji, you feel like you are actually engaging with the camera because you are able to have control over what you're doing instead of pointing and shooting and then, okay, I got a shot. This camera gives you all that plus more in terms of usability. And it does look more like a camera than toy. What I see as Sony A6600, which is probably one of its positive points, is that it looks much simpler to use. For me, when I look at the lenses that Sony has, which they have come out with the two latest lenses, I think Fuji still has a much better selection and much better quality optics than anything that Sony has produced. That's my personal opinion, but also confirmed by MTF charts and other things that I saw, and having used both cameras, both lenses from their lineups, I can tell you it's always hands down situation where Fuji outperforms Sony in all respects. So that is my point of view. I hope this has been helpful and informative so that you can make a better decision on your next purchase. But also, you can follow us on our YouTube channel where I have more videos on explaining how this Fuji is as a camera, and there's a separate review on that. You can also watch my other review for the A6600. We have news coming out on the latest camera, which is gonna be GH6. So those, stay tuned for that. I thank you for watching, and I see you in our next review.